Okie dokie. Let's film this way. I think the depth of field makes it a little bit more interesting, don't you think? Okay, I think this is working now. Okay, so 2 months ago, I did an interview with the Lovey Awards with a friend of mine, collaborator friend of mine, and for their collaboration series. And they put out a report about a few weeks ago, and I was pretty proud, chuffed, whatever you want to call it, to see a couple of my quotes pulled into the report. And I'll read both of them to you because I think they're kind of funny. Well, one of them is. The first one was, I think every single one of us are just basically kids in aging meat suits, and we're finding ways to have fun and be adults and also enjoy the work that we do. So, the fact that they chose that actually at the front of the report is hilarious to me, and I really appreciate it because it proves my point even further that we're all just adults just trying to have fun and trying to make it work, right? And then the second quote they picked, which is the one that I kind of want to emphasize on in this video, is if you don't have the same vision in mind for a level of excellence that you're trying to achieve or an aesthetic, then you're going to run into a problem because you're going to butt heads. You have to make sure that you're partnering with people who have the same bar for excellence. Now, that's really easy to say. So what does a bar for excellence look like? It looks like being practical. It looks like predictability. It looks like consistency. And it's none of the sexy things that I think a lot of people talk about. I mentioned before in my last video that entrepreneurship is viewed as something sexy, but it really is not, because a lot of entrepreneurs spend a lot of time alone. We spend a lot of time working, and a lot of times it feels very lonely, and you kind of wonder to yourself if you're going crazy because you have this idea in your head and you're like, is this going to work? Are people going to catch on? But I do have a fundamental belief that if one person or two people have an idea, then there's, of the millions of people on this planet, you have your niche. So, with that being said, to have the same bar for excellence or setting a bar for excellence is creating an essence of predictability. And what does that look like? Creating an essence of predictability means planning and documentation. So that could be as simple as, creating a production schedule, creating avenues of communication with your client, and telling them about the plan that you have and how to manage the relationship, creating expectations, setting dates for client check-ins, telling them what to expect, and creating those expectations, down to how you're going to name things and making it very easy for a person to perhaps receive a file of some sort that they need to review, and them understanding that it needs their review. So, for example, if you're setting a client meeting and you have a certain document that needs to be reviewed, you want to call the meeting client review and perhaps the description of what's being reviewed. Now, you don't want to get carried away with subject lines. And I know some of the stuff sounds really mundane and really unnecessary to talk about, but I find that a lot of people really don't know how to name their emails or files correctly. Now, if your company doesn't have a naming convention document or process and procedure regarding that, then that's something that you need to figure out, inform your team on, but also inform your client on, so that everybody kind of knows the plan of how this is going to work. And the details of how you manage something and create this bar for excellence is where it thrives. That excellence thrives in the details, in the mundane, in the unsexy stuff. Another idea is also creating a wiki inside your project management tool. Now, project management tools, that's a whole other thing that maybe one day I'll talk about myself. But the problem is a lot of them are very difficult to navigate. The majority of the bigger companies out there use something called Confluence or Jira. It's two parts of the same system essentially, but two different function. Confluence is a glorified wiki of sorts. When I was at Fox, we had documentation, and it was there on this intranet where anybody that needed something, or needed to know how to do something, or needed to know where to upload a file or name something, whatever, there was a how-to document or information that they could access at any time of day and reference it, so that there was no questions, there was no dependency on another person. So if somebody needed to take a vacation or a sick day or whatever, or was stuck in a meeting, they were not blocked. And so that's another bar for excellence. A bar for excellence really means taking care of all the mundane things, creating predictability, and taking the work out of thinking about the mundane, so that all of the remainder of your brain space can be left to the creativity. People love to talk about this kind of stuff when they reference the uniform, right? The uniform that most entrepreneurs have. So you look at, oh God, why can't I remember his name right now off the top of my head? Of course, this happens when I'm filming. It's the guy from Meta, that created Meta, and the guy that created Apple. You know what I'm talking about. They were wearing, the turtleneck or the t-shirt with jeans, and that was their everyday uniform. They took the thought process out of what they would wear so that their brain space could be left to more important decision making. So it's kind of the same thing, but you're talking about processes and procedures. And a lot of agencies out there, they love to tout the creativity of their work. And creativity and creative directors are really, really important to the fold, but so is everybody else in the fold. If other jobs are not done, then the team as a whole and everybody that has their job to do cannot function optimally. So when you're talking about, for example, trying to attract luxury clients or anybody that is going to spend money with you, you want to create the luxury of peace of mind. You have to have the same values as the clients that you're trying to attract, but you also need to make sure that you are expressing those values in the practices that you implement into your company. So little to no last minute changes to schedule, setting expectations, and that means with your team as well, not just your clients. If your team is unhappy, your client is going to be able to tell. And I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of times in my working directly with designers and art directors and creatives, even my own, I can say this for myself, the work is not as great if people aren't having a good time. If people aren't inspired, if they don't feel like they have ownership of their own creativity and their contribution to whatever the project is. And so when you create predictability out of the boring stuff, everybody else thrives. Everything thrives. So if you are the leader of a company and accidents happen, last minute things happen all the time, but canceling meetings last minute, or honestly, sometimes even working faster is not a good thing, and moving a schedule up is not a good thing, because you have to think about the person that you're dealing with. If, for example, you're dealing with a multi-million-dollar client, somebody who has assistants for their assistant, they have somebody cooking their meals, they have yada, 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 they need predictability. Now, delivering ahead of schedule is fantastic if it doesn't impact their schedule. You can be as buttoned up as you want to be, but they need the consistency to know that they, on this day, at this time, are going to come and see whatever they need to see to approve it and keep the process moving. But if you, for example, you on your end as the service provider get done sooner and you request a meeting sooner and change things at the last minute, it can throw somebody off balance. It's not always a bad thing, but it can be a bad thing. You really have to stop and take into consideration other people in the fold. It's not just about you, and that's a whole other subject about leadership and stuff. But to scale it back down, if you're going to create a bar for excellence or even talk about it, Make sure that it's embedded into the value system that you try to iterate in your business practices. So I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to maybe delve into it a little bit further. But yeah, real quick, one thing I forgot to add before I turned off the camera. I wanted to give an example. Like, for example, if you buy a Dyson or you buy a phone, you buy a car, any high ticket, high value item that needs a lot of instructions and whatever, that's really expensive also. Almost always, almost always you're going to get a manual. You're going to have a warranty, and you're going to have some sort of maintenance and customer support outlined in the purchasing process, in the T's and C's, and like I said, in the manual that you get when you get the box and you open it up. To the point where you will always also have YouTube videos on how things work, that kind of stuff. And that's another level of excellence that people, I don't think, really think about. You really want to over-communicate expectations. And then they're not going to always be perfect, and you're not going to always have it all figured out. But when you're asking a client to work with you, to trust you, you need to evoke that confidence by having a premeditation of their needs. So, yeah, that's it. Okay, bye.